Good morning.
Hello, good
Hello,
morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Just turn my volume up. How is everyone doing?
Not too bad, yourself?
Doing
Good.
well, thank you. Okay. Not sure if anyone else is going to be joining us. If they are, I'll just keep an eye on the waiting room, but maybe we should go ahead and get started. So we had a few updates on our end, but I think we wanted to give you all a chance to respond to some of the questions that we had. Is that where you'd like to start, or did you have a different approach in mind?
Yeah, we can start, and I can share my screen too. I have things pulled up. So yeah, I was going to say no one else from our side. We've got myself and Brittany you've met, and Morgan is one of our civil engineers that has been looking at this. So she's also on the call here.
Okay, great. Good morning, Morgan.
Let me see here.
Good morning.
So let me know if you can see my screen here.
I can see
I
it.
can see it.
Just trying to fix my views here. Yeah, so overall, so yeah, thanks for rescheduling this, by the way. We got your comments right before the last meeting and wanted some time to digest this a little bit. So yeah, we were kind of looking, full transparency, caught off guard a little bit, saying, the first couple sentences saying, our job's to do this and it wasn't achieved and, expectations weren't met. So I think we just wanted to have a better understanding, better conversation. Maybe there should have been some more discussion before we issued the memos on what the expectations were. We thought we addressed what was in the scope of work, but it seems like those expectations were not met. So yeah, we read through all the comments and we drafted a memo. We can give you a copy of this afterwards, but figured we'd walk through and talk about it first. But
Sure.
that way we kind of address things line by line. But yeah, maybe that's our first question. Is it seemed to me that the questions were centered around whether this should be approved or not. So just in our experience from being in the peer review seat, we can look at certain things, provide recommendations, but ultimately it's up to the town, the zoning board, planning board, whoever it might be, Concom, to make those decisions. We can certainly make recommendations, but we're not going to tell you which way you should rule, essentially. So when we first read this, that was kind of our understanding, was that you were looking for guidance on should this be approved or not.
Yeah.
But maybe that was a misunderstanding on our part, was that we're glad to take a look at each of these items. But just coming from experience as an applicant, we've received peer reviews and addressed peer reviews, but ultimately the board may or may not agree with the peer review, so ultimately they'll make their own decision. So that was just kind of the overall understanding of when we first read through this. But is there anything else to add there? I mean, I seemed like we were on the same page heading into this, but it seems like when we got the comments back, maybe we weren't.
I think just to respond to that initial paragraph or the overall feedback, I think we discussed internally and thought it would be a much more robust review. We were looking for recommendations, but we felt like it was recommendation light in a way, and it sort of felt, I don't want to say neutral, but almost like there just wasn't enough meat or substance to the report. So it's not that I think that could have been a miscommunication. It's not that we're expecting WSP to make the decision for the town, but we are asking WSP to really evaluate what was presented. And from a professional point of view, does this make sense? Does it add up? Does this need more here or less there? These are the types of recommendations, because then we can come back and say, okay, our third party reviewer felt like there were some holes here, whereas they felt like this was sufficient. We were looking for, a lot more in terms of that type of feedback, and we didn't feel like we got that at all.
Yeah.
But also kind of a quick segue, and this might make you feel better. The plans will have to change, so you could look at it as a second opportunity to do this in a different manner because Concom has asked the applicant to go back and redesign a few things. But we'll get into that a little bit more at the end.
Sure, sure. Um, yeah, so that's understood, and I think our hope was through this exercise, as we responded to each of these, that perhaps there's a clear understanding of addressing each of the comments. And yeah, that we probably should have discussed that a little bit more. Just looking back at the scope of services, we talk about site design and layout, but that's kind of a broad category. Um, so good to know. Good to know. We can definitely take that into account for the second round. But yeah, if we just walk through these, that was kind of our understanding. We based our proposal based on the SWQ. So in there, it listed site design and layout and phasing and water quality, glare, those types of things. So we just looked at those things as they were presented to us. So that was the basis of our response. But knowing this now, we can certainly, provide detailed information like we have in each of the further comments. And this is kind of like what we talked about before. We were just looking at special permit. We weren't looking at, making any sort of ruling or anything like that.
So, can I jump in here?
Sure.
I guess when I was thinking of site design and layout, I was thinking that you all who have done this before, I understand that you've been involved in a lot of projects like this, might have comments on, when they put the solar arrays on steep slopes, does that seem right to you? Does the spacing of the solar panels seem right in terms of being able to access them? We don't have experience with these things. We've had some of them come through. We've had like maybe 5 projects, but none of them on sloping sites, none of them where there's this much tree clearing. So we just kind of wanted to get a sense from you. Does this seem right? Is this the way you would do it?
Hmm.
So I was like thinking, well, you might comment on, yes, it seems okay to put this many solar arrays on this type of sloping site, and the amount of grading that has to be done in order to accommodate this seems reasonable. I don't know, just like general statements like that, because I think that the zoning board of appeals, as well as the residents of Amherst, are going to be looking at wanting someone to say, yeah, this looks like a reasonable project. Clearing 40 acres and putting 10 acres of solar arrays on a sloping site, that seems reasonable, and the way that they've done it seems like it'll work, you know so and
Certainly.
and maybe you were thinking of it from a different point of view, but I think that's
No, it's good point. And yes, we've certainly dealt with all of those issues on other projects before. So yeah, now knowing this, we can certainly comment on those areas.
Mhm.
So yeah, good to know, because we do talk about that further on. We talk about the phasing. So in terms of the spacing, so yeah, we did have some comments on that. The inter-row spacing is typical for what we've seen for solar designs like we have in here. We've had anywhere from 9 to 20 feet. I think we're at 15 here. So certainly reasonable from a solar design perspective. From an access perspective, again, we'll kind of, have that conversation with the town, is that, most of the time when we're designing, we just need, a four-wheeler or a pickup truck to get through there. But we've had certain communities where they want a certain fire apparatus to get through, or a certain size truck to get through. So that way we've had to design around that, because it's in the town's bylaw, or the town inspector or fire chief dictates so. So just in general, we're saying this is typical. This is a typical layout from what we've seen.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad that you're saying that now.
Yes, and I think we
Okay.
had because we had two memos. I think the first memo, the battery, we said that for the road, typical is 20 feet. They have a 15 feet. We've done both, but usually we design to meet the standards, what's in the bylaws.
Mhm.
Some want a fire truck to get in and turn around and come back. So that way, it takes a little more design to have a larger road. But others, like I said, just need a pickup truck or a 1 ton, and it's 15 feet is fine. Because typically, when you're coming in for maintenance, it's just one pickup truck, so you don't really need a full 2-lane road.
Mhm.
So those are some comments we had in here, and we can certainly, like I said, we can have a revised memo if there's a revised design coming, or we can give you a response to these comments as well. But those are the typical things in terms of the spacing in the road. Sorry, Jacinta, I didn't see. Did you have a hand up
It's
there?
okay, Andrew. I just really forgot my manners at the beginning, and we
Mm,
should have gone around and introduced ourselves and had
mm.
everybody introduce themselves because we don't all know everyone and we all haven't met. So, can I just take the opportunity to take a moment to do that, if you don't mind, please?
By
And
all
I'll
means.
start, you guys, Jacinta Williams, one of the town planners, and I will pass it to Chris Bascom so that he can introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Chris Bascom. I'm the fire inspector for the town of Amherst, so I do all the plan reviews for energy storage and everything else.
Okay, I'm Chris Brestrup. I'm former planning director. I'm back working in the planning department part-time until they hire another planning director. And I have been assigned to help with the review of this project, help Jacinta and the building commissioner with the review of this project. And Andrew?
Thanks. Yes, Drew Vardakis, project manager for WSP, and I've also got Brittany and Morgan from WSP as well.
Mhm.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Chris, did you want to add anything before we continue in the conversation?
Not specific, but I was on board with Drew when about the notes for the access road. We've had, other projects in town, and yeah, we've had discussions on the sizes of the road, but when we add some batteries on to these projects, we like to be able to get at least an engine down to those locations. So we don't require our ladder trucks. And a 20-foot access road, if you read into it, is actually meant for two fire trucks to pass each other while one is operating and the other's trying to leave the scene. So we don't foresee that being something we need. So 15 feet with a appropriate turnaround is usually sufficient for us. And so that's where that comes from. But thank you. Yeah, no, I have reviewed your battery energy storage system notes, and they look solid. I guess I'll have a few questions at the end, but thank you.
Back to you, Andrew. Thanks for letting me do that.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. So I think that one was about the design and the layout in terms of the spacing in the road. Construction phasing. Yeah, we can talk more about that too. We did have a comment in there on that as well, because we also expressed some concerns on that. So that is something we're looking for more information from the applicant on. Whether or not stumps were going to be left. So I thought we had addressed that one because we also share concerns about that. And in terms of clearing, yeah, another good comment. And this can add some added discussion on slopes too, because, like we say, in other projects, we have had phasing where we have cleared 10 acres at a time. If you look at the EPA construction general permit, they suggest, 5 acres, but it's not a requirement. So that's something to look at if they want to have a smaller phasing plan. But we did have some more comments on that too. In our memo, we did have some concerns about that, but so yeah, we can expand on that, especially in terms of slopes, because it all depends too. If you have good contractors on site, certainly 10 acres can be manageable. But if you've got, improper erosion controls in place and a contractor that's not really watching that, or there's not inspectors on site, and you get a lot of heavy rainstorms, we all know what can happen. So, it's a relative statement. If 10 acres is too much, it kind of a lot depends on that. You got to have good controls in place, and you got to have good contractors on site and good inspection controls as well. So
I would say those sentences that you just uttered would be important to put in this report, you know, it may seem like obvious to you, but it's not obvious to the ZBA members, and it's not obvious to the people in the public who are kind of looking at this project and hoping that it'll work out okay, but very worried about it. So even general statements like that are helpful.
Sure.
One thing I have been concerned about is they're planning to clear the whole site. And I think this question that we have under construction phasing is not exactly accurate, because they're planning to clear 40 acres. And then they're planning to, you know, grub and clear topsoil and do all those other things 10 acres at a time. So I guess, you know, that's the magnitude of this project. So if you could kind of respond to that about
Sure.
whether that seems reasonable to you, and what kinds of things need to be put in place, or what things seem to be not totally explained here that need to be explained, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly expand upon that. It does help that they're not grubbing it all at once, because
Mm.
leaving the stumps and roots in place helps with, you know, the erosion control.
Mhm.
But once you start, you know, grubbing and stumping, you know, clearly the soil's not held in place as well as if you get a heavy rainstorm like we will this week.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can certainly expand upon that.
Mhm.
in
Okay,
terms-
and also in terms of construction phasing, um, the timing, I think there's a written document somewhere that talks about timing between phases. And if you could comment on that, and maybe you have commented on that here.
Yeah, we had drafted a response here. I mean, there's no standard. It's just using good practice, and then also in the SWIP and the CGP, we have in our construction plans. There's certain measures taken for winter construction and frozen ground, so that should be addressed. So we can talk about that too. But in terms of regulation, there's no standard minimum time essentially.
Mhm.
It's just the rules say, you know, once it's established, and I think we talk about in the next one how much stabilization. The rules say 70% or more ground cover. So oftentimes we'll be asked to sign off on a site, but the grass hasn't grown in yet, or
Mhm.
the seed hasn't taken, so they need to reseed or wait until the spring, as if, you know, you're getting into late, you know, October, November season and things aren't fully established. They'll have to come back in the spring. So a lot of that depends on season, but in terms of time, there's no set standard. But we can talk about typical times or what we've seen on a typical project. But then in
And
terms of how much as well, we did have some comments on there. I think it was yeah, findings 20 through 22. Just some clarification on what was proposed for stabilization, because again, there was some discrepancy. So we did have some comments there.
mhm. And if you could talk about what you just said with regard to working over the winter, I think that's going to be important, because I think what's happening here is this project has been around since, I don't know, 2021. And the actual application was submitted in 2023. We had a prior application that didn't go forward because of issues related to wetlands. So once the applicant gets going, the applicant has every incentive to do this as fast as possible, because there's been so much delay with regard to permitting. So I think any comments that you can make with regard to, like, it's not a good idea to work on frozen ground, or if you work on frozen ground, you have to put these features in place to keep bad things from happening. You know, just like general experience that you have from working on sites like this. And do you usually say, well, once the ground's frozen, we stop working until, you know, April 1st or something like that? What what is the typical uh, good practice to put in place here? And again, it may seem obvious to you, but it's not obvious to the zoning board of appeals or the town staff, or, you know, the people who are looking on. So even general statements like that are going to be helpful to us.
Sure. Yeah, we can add some notes in there. And then just, you know, for discussion, you know, it's seasonal. It depends on what kind of winter we have. But,
Mhm.
you know, just something, we had some other sites further up north almost sometimes the contractors prefer that the ground freezes hard so they can have better access, because if it's a warm winter and then it's wet and snow,
Mm-hmm.
snows and then melts, it turns the site very muddy.
Mm-hmm.
So almost sometimes they'll prefer to have frozen ground. But then if it gets warm one day and rains, the ground's frozen. So yeah, we'll add some notes on that, because there's certainly factors that come into play, depending on the seasons.
Okay, that's helpful.
So we can do that. And then, yeah, I think we had comments in there on stabilization. I think they had some in there, but we had some findings, and then some comments there about some clarifications. There was something about a discrepancy. Yeah, I think we stated, what was it, number 22? Yeah, they had talked about stockpiling, and so we just wanted clarification. The narrative had some statements of woody debris and stockpiles, and then the plans showed something different. So we were just asking them for either an updated plan, but it sounds like you said, everything is being updated now anyways. So that was more about the stockpiling and woody debris. I think that probably had to do with the stumping and grubbing, like you mentioned.
And they're not planning to dispose of the woody debris on site, are they?
I'd have to check back through.
No, not in their 2024 plans. They were
Yeah.
planning of removing it completely from site.
Okay.
Thank you.
But they are planning to leave the soil on site, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, again, just some clarification on that would be helpful, because it wasn't clear right away.
Okay.
Let's see, water quality, about erosion controls. I think we had asked for some clarification there. Yep, findings 24 to 26 were addressed, to add some more notes on the plans. And again, this is going to need a construction general permit from the EPA and a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So these things will need to be addressed in that. And again, going back to that too, about what we've seen in other projects in terms of good contractors and good erosion controls and good site management. We've had to do ourselves. We've had to do, third party inspections, or because whatever contractor is doing this is going to have to abide by the CGP and the SWIP, but it's all about how it's enforced and reported. So we've had to do, whether the town's taking it on with their own inspections departments, or they've hired out, third party site reviewers. I know we're doing a peer review here of the application, but I've seen other times where there wasn't great confidence in applicants or the contractors, so they wanted surety that the CGP and the SWIP was held up. So they've had third party inspectors go out for those types of things. So we can touch on that too, and things like
I
this.
think that's really important, and we may end up recommending that to the CBA. Can you go back to your document just for a minute? Like when you have things like CGP and SWPPP, can you either have a legend or something that spells out exactly what that is?
Yes, we
Maybe
might
you
have done
did
that
that.
earlier up here.
Even
Again,
EPA,
yeah.
even saying
do-
EPA, that's like the Federal
Yeah.
Environmental Protection
Yeah,
Agency.
so
Okay.
where
So
we stated it once earlier on, we shortened later on.
I see.
So we can spell it out in full if that's easier for
Yeah,
everybody.
even if you just say federal or state or something
Yeah.
like that, or who is in charge of it.
Yeah.
Because again, this is going to be read by lay people who don't understand a lot about construction and don't understand about all these layers of permitting and monitoring that have to happen. And so they want to be able to read this so that they understand it. So anything in here that you can put in like that would be helpful.
No, it's good to know. Because in some towns, they've seen, I know you said you've seen 5 projects or so. So with every project, everybody gets more informed. But some communities are more than others, where they've seen 30 projects and all about this. So
Yeah.
no, good point. Can have some further explanation there. Let's see. So yeah, I think that had to do with the erosion control measures, water quality. I think one of these, the basins. So we talked earlier about ignoring the stormwater test. So we kind of thought that comment fell into that, the stormwater management. So we didn't review any basin location calculations. So we didn't comment on that because our understanding was we weren't looking at anything stormwater related.
Okay.
Yes,
All
I
right.
know
Yep.
earlier we're talking erosion controls and construction and those things of that nature, but for this one, we thought that was pertaining to stormwater, so we didn't go there with that one.
All right.
And I think that was it for most of the construction stuff. Yes, we were waiting more information on the glare study, it sounds like. And then yeah, going back to what Chris said for the batteries. So we expanded a little bit more on compliance with the UL testing with 9540 and 855. But something that was lacking that we expanded upon here was the risk mitigation. So that said it was not in the typical format by NFPA, so that was a good comment. So we added some more there. And I think there was a question on just what it looks like, and I think the applicant had that. They had a cut sheet with a picture on it. I think it was yeah, they did provide that. So that may not have been very available or might have been buried in the pages and pages of documents, but they did have a sheet in there that had a typical picture. So we just did note that the name of that document there.
Okay. Can I go back to one thing which you did mention in your report on various topics, and that was the LEC report about inventory of what did they call it? On-site. I don't have the words. Oh, natural resource inventory. So that report, and I know Brittany commented on it in the documents that you gave us, but that report was done in 2022, and it was done using desktop material and wasn't a site visit. And so we're in this weird situation now where the ZBA asked to have a review, a third-party peer review of what? Endangered plants, amphibians, and bats. And we have this LEC report from 2022 that's really slim, and it doesn't really talk much about any of those things except bats. So I wondered if you could give a little more robust evaluation of the LEC report, because what we're going to be doing is recommending to the ZBA that they require a more robust report from the applicant. And because right now I feel like that report that they submitted isn't even worthy of third-party review. And thank you very much for including it in your review. But if you could just say a little bit more about why it's not sufficient, that would be helpful to us.
Yeah, sure. And the thing with desktop is that that's all it is, really. That's typically what we do for our projects as well. And we've certainly run into the same thing. If a community wants something further, we've done on-site, visual confirmation of such things. So that's totally fine. The other one we always do is for wetlands. The wetland mapping can only be so accurate. So we always do that, unless it's not warranted or not requested, but you can only rely on mapping for wetlands by so much. So that's why we typically do delineations following desktop maps for wetlands. But I know that's a more of a Concom issue. But yeah, we can certainly take a look at that and provide some comment on that as well.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Just to let you know what's going on, this project, as I said, started in 2021. It's just been dragging and dragging. So it's recently been starting a review with the Conservation Commission. And the Conservation Commission, there was an ORAD done last spring, I guess. It did get an ORAD, but apparently there weren't some things on site, vernal pools and potentially isolated land subject to flooding that weren't that hadn't been mapped when the ORAD was done. So that is kind of a bone of contention with the Conservation Commission right now. And the other thing is the applicant has submitted a notice of intent under the town bylaw, but not under the state bylaw. So the Conservation Commission is dealing with that. And recently, since the first set of drawings were submitted, the April 2024 drawings show a little string of vernal pools and other small water features coming down sort of through the upper northwest corner of the site. And those, I think the applicant is showing a roadway going through there, going through the buffer of that area. And the Conservation Commission has essentially told them, no, you can't do that. So that's where the redesign comes from. It's not all the solar arrays that have to be redesigned, but it's that roadway that's going through those buffer zones. So that'll give you a sense of, the magnitude of how much redesign they're going to have to do. But the way it's been left now with the Concom is that the applicant is supposed to redesign this and come back. I think it's February 12th. Is that right, Jacinta?
I think so, but I thought I had February 8th written down.
Oh, okay. Well, it's sometime in early February that they're supposed to come back to the Concom and present a redesign. So, so that's kind of where we are. And I know that your contract with us says that you're going to evaluate drawings that were submitted as of June 6th of 2024, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm looking to you to tell me, how do you think we should handle this? Should we, get your comments, present them to the ZBA in, when were we planning to present them? The 23rd of January, was that right,
Yes.
Jacinta?
Yes.
So present your findings to the ZBA on the 23rd of January, and then should we wrap up these contracts that we have here, or should we extend them to include the new material that's going to be given to us? So you don't have to answer that now, but that would be something to kind of think about. How do you want to handle the contracts going
Yeah, we can think
forward?
about that. I know we extended the dates
Yeah.
recently just because of the extended timelines.
Yeah.
And I believe our first contract was just reaching 100% for the hours and effort there. I'd have to check back on where we're at for the second one. So yeah, we'll have to think about that. We could do it either way, likely do a change order for additional round of reviews, or we could just close this one out and start a new one. We can think about that. I don't know if there's a preference either way on our end, but yeah, I do know that first one was reaching an end, and now the second one we can look back at where we're at, because I know we're kind of right in the middle. I know we haven't done any ZBA meetings or discussion yet. We're kind of right in the middle of the round of reviews of findings. So yeah, let me think about that. We can discuss that further. But
okay. And also I wanted to ask you, so you've made recommendations about things that you want them to include or change, right?
correct.
Like under the solar glare study, there were a couple of things that you wanted from them: methodology and
Correct.
revising an analysis.
Yep.
So do you consider that when they submit that material, that that's part of the contract that we already have with you to review that resubmission, or how does that work?
I'll have to look back. I think them. I don't know if that's an additional round because we reviewed what they had already. I'll have to look back. But yeah, whether we wrap that into a newer one, I'm not sure. But
I guess
yeah,
it probably depends on how much you expect them to be giving us. Like, if they're going to give us a whole lot of material, then it would make sense to change your contract. If they're going to give us sort of a minor amount and you just want it for the purposes of, checking something off, then maybe we don't amend the contract. So that's up, you think about that.
Yeah, we'll think about that. We'll circle back with our glare team, see how we want to handle that. But yeah, we can do that.
Okay, and it sounded from Chris Bascom like everything with regard to battery storage was okay. Is that the case, Chris?
I just wanted to double check that all your findings were that it is compliant with NFPA 855/2020 is what your statement was, right?
Right, but we did have some comments about risk mitigation because it wasn't fully addressed and then it wasn't in the typical format. So we did have that. So that was a good comment on this latest round.
And they don't reference 2023 at all in any of their, we've found with some manufacturers that they go back and forth and they're a little inconsistent in their use of 2020 versus 2023.
Yeah.
Some of their newer design stuff, they'll say that they're following 2023. So I just wanted to make sure that they were consistent in their use of NFPA 855 version. And if there was any expectation for us to adopt or at least for this use a 2023. We had
That's
an
a good question.
other side of town, we had an issue with that.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on Brittany or Morgan. I don't know if you recall. I'd have to double check if there was any 2023 references, but that's a good point. We'll check with our battery folks too on whether that's a recommendation. If we further recommend everything's 2023 or if 2020 is sufficient.
Great. And just the Sol banks in general, those are UL 9540A. We have a copy of the tests. Have we had any fires since they've had the 9540A and come back from wherever they did that test? I guess that's the question. The Powens were considered UL 9540A listed, and then we had fires during their installations. And now they've retrofitted them with some other things, and we're really questioning whether these batteries on the other side of town are still UL 9540A compliant, based on the fact that they haven't done full scale fire testing with the changes that they've done to their system.
Okay.
So the history of the Sol banks will be, if I don't pull it up, the neighbors right there are gonna find it somewhere.
Everybody, yeah, exactly.
So
Find everything
we need to
online.
know the history of the Sol banks, just make sure we haven't had any significant fire like the Powens that they're trying to use on the other side of town. Yeah, and other than that, no, it looks like everything you guys, say that it looks like it meets what it's supposed to, with the exception of, like you said, the comments. Yeah, but otherwise, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody heard about the Powens when that happened in New York. And I haven't heard anything. I'll check and we'll check on that and get back to you. But I'm not aware of anything. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened though. So we'll check on that.
Thank you.
So you're going to incorporate the comments that you have in your latest memo into your report and whatever else we talked about today. And then you'll be prepared to give a presentation to the ZBA on the 23rd of January?
Correct.
Okay. And Jacinta, when do we need the written material in order to get that to the ZBA in time?
Given the feedback that you've gotten today, I would say maybe January 8th. Would that be reasonable? Do you need more time or less time?
No, I think that's probably reasonable. I know the holidays, it's going to be a couple of dead weeks there with things going on, but I think by the 8th, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. I feel a lot better after this conversation.
Yes, likewise. Yeah, I'm glad we took some time to review the comments and digest everything and take a further look at that. So likewise.
Okay.
And I just had a few notes. I know Chris and I, when we talked, there were two questions. We may have already talked about this. The first note that I have is to understand, or it's maybe more of a statement, understand Bess has recently been required to be in view of the roadway. That's an Eversource situation. So will this location be satisfactory? I think that was a question the town had. And then the second one, glare may not be changing because they just need to change the road, but not the array. So those were the two I guess, pins that I have here.
Yeah, so
Um,
just a quick background on that one, that Jacinta mentioned first. On Montague Road here in town, there was a project with, panels and battery storage. Battery storage took a little longer, and it turned out Eversource needed the batteries within view of the final pole, I guess is what it was.
Hmm.
And because the panels array themselves were a distance away and you couldn't see it, they made them change their design and move the batteries closer to the road. And so therefore the town's question is, will the batteries be within view of the final pole? And meet all of the Eversource requirements so that this doesn't come back and have to get redesigned like that project did.
Okay. No, that's great. I wasn't aware of that, so we'll definitely take a look at that.
We weren't either until it
I had not heard that, so
passed.
good to know that's coming from Eversource. Good point. Thanks for that, Chris.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify about what we'll be delivering back to you guys to make sure we have it in the right format. So typically in a response, we would just provide a separate response document to the first round of revision comments that were provided to us by the town, but it sounds like you would like us to actually just go back and revise our initial memos. Is that correct? Or would just the separate kind of what Drew has been showing, a separate response document adequate?
I'd like you to make a new document that incorporates the things that we talked about and the things in Drew's document, because the ZBA hasn't seen the material that you submitted yet. And so they will be confused if they see, what you submitted and then what our response was and then Drew's response. They're going to have trouble piecing all of that together. So if you could just give us clean documents on the glare and battery storage, and then another clean document on the various topics, that would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep, we could do that. And I'm just looking, so the ZBA is the 23rd. Are you on I'm just want to make sure we may have some conflicts that day.
It's
Well,
usually in the evening at 6 p.m.
Okay.
And it's usually on Zoom.
Okay.
So I will just send you a Zoom invite and you can do the meeting from wherever is most convenient
Okay. That
for
was going to be
you.
my question, if it was in person or Zoom. Zoom would be preferable. And then, so your preference would to be have that discussion, like you said, before the new filing. You want to have all this reviewed in January before the February submission.
Chris, that's a
Uh,
question for you.
I think that everybody is eagerly awaiting the third-party review, including the applicant. So I think it would be best to give them something in January, and then, if things change drastically, we can talk about that, what happens after that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So just to clarify or recap, we're going to move forward with the design that we have now as it's proposed until we know otherwise. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's fair to the applicant too, because it gives them some sense of the things that you're looking at. So, they have been asking us for your review since the summer. And I think they have in mind that, they would like to get the things changed that you feel need to be changed.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then if they've got a redesign coming, they can pick up a lot of the things we've pointed out. So hopefully they can correct a lot of that with that
Yeah.
February submission.
Right. Okay.
I have a question. It's kind of a housekeeping question, but then it also relates to what we were talking about earlier. If we move forward with this strategy of going back, a new clean document, incorporating all of the thoughts and presenting on the 23rd, would we consider that, and maybe this is a premature question, but would we consider that the closing out of this first initial invoice? Would we call this complete?
It could be. you know, we're open to it either way. We can extend that for further reviews, or we can kind of close the book on that and then open something new for February on. We can make it work either way.
Mhm.
Okay,
Right, I don't think we need to decide about that right now.
Mm.
okay.
Yep.
All right, do you think we're good?
I think that answers all of my questions, unless Brittany or Morgan has anything else from our side.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thanks for working with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for the
you.
time.
Thank
All right, we'll be
Alrighty.
in touch.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.